All right. Okay, it's recording now. Well, thank you for your time today. I'm excited to talk about this topic. And I'm gonna be sharing my screen with you to share the slides. All right, so my presentation today is about becoming versus being. So you probably remember when you were a little kid and you were asked about this question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I know I have been asked this a lot of times, I think especially by my teachers. And usually we will answer the defaults like I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a nurse, or a teacher, or a builder. And some kids will even dream as being a an astronaut, right? So I think this question was asked by adults with the best of intent, and they wanted to like explore or find out what our interests are. And when they were asking me this question, I would say that I wanted to be a teacher, or I wanted to do something related with art. I wasn't clear about what path I wanted to follow. And as I grew up, I started to think more about this question. And I think that there's something wrong in the terminology of this question, because the message seems to inform that once we hit our career in life, or once we hit that spot in life, that's our success, right? And that's the ending point. And I feel that's doing more damaging than good to most of us when we're growing up, because we're fixed on that idea that once we get to college, we're achieving something. And when I was in high school, I remember being too worried about what I wanted to do as a career. And I used this picture to make myself feel better, because I did graduate from college, from school, high school. And when I was 19, I did my first year in college in Guatemala, and I dropped out of college the first year, and I felt like a failure. But it was later, in like six months later, when I served my mission. That was the time when I realized about purpose and potential. So, I mean, that was a great lesson I learned in the mission. And so I want to take you to a analysis, I guess, or an example. So I want you to think about paper for a second. And so we can think about paper as a medium for us to write notes, or do sketches, or doodling, or even we can use paper to print an essay. But when I'm thinking about this way about paper, I'm just doing it in a way of an ending point. If we think of paper, or if we take like a stack of paper and we put it together and we put like covers at the ends, we can make a book. Or if I grab a lot of other pieces of paper and I put them together, I can end up making a collage or a masterpiece. So I think I'm starting to like think about other ways or other purposes about paper here. But I think there's more that we can do with paper. I don't know if you ever thought about paper becoming into concrete or becoming into a fertilizer, because it can be possible. If you burn paper, the ashes from the paper are used or can become in those products and fertilizer for plants and concrete. So that's great. That's extending even more the purpose of paper. So we learned throughout our lives, and we struggle in life, and we face a lot of challenges. But those things gives us joy at the end of the day. And I think that that's part of becoming, that's a process. As we were learning with the paper example, it had to go through a process to become something. And that's the same with us. Without that hardship, we hardly will be achieving something. So I want to talk about the guy in the middle. And I asked him recently about that question that we were talking about at the beginning, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said that he wanted to be a doctor. And I thought it was very interesting because I never thought that he wanted to be a doctor. But he said that he didn't accomplish that or wasn't able to do that because of the lack of resources and lack of financial stability that there was in his household. They barely had the means to afford shoes for him to go to school. And he was lucky enough to get an education. So I thought that was very inspiring. Eventually he became, somebody great. And I asked him another question that was, who do you want to be in life? And he said, I want to help transform the lives of many people. And I think he's already doing that. I don't know if he's realizing it, but I think he is. This guy turns to be my father, turns out to be my dad. So a little bit of background story about him is because of the lack of resources for him to go to school, to medical school specifically. He explored other venues and he wanted to study architecture. He's a great artist as well. So he thought that he could put those skills to that use. And he graduated from college when he was 40 years old. And in the meantime, he's a family guy, so he had to take care of the family. And he was working for the church for like 10 years as a property manager. So not really related to architecture, but in a way. And then he was unemployed for 5 years. He began to look for other ways to earn an income. And that wasn't an easy transition in life, I believe, or I think, because just the struggle of finding employment in Guatemala was very, very bad. And he started to partner with other people and talking about projects that he could participate in. And so he started to build schools and build other clinic centers in Guatemala. And he started to focus in an area called Senau. That's a very remote village in the north of Guatemala. And so he partnered with the right people at the right moment. He began to craft ideas with these people. And eventually they formed San Mateo Foundation. And so San Mateo Foundation is a nonprofit organization that supports and promotes education in Guatemala. And I don't think that back like 40 years ago, he was thinking about that path in his life. He wasn't thinking about becoming an advocate for education at all. He was just thinking about being or finding a way to make income, right? But that transcends to bigger things, I want to say. And so he was able to form San Mateo in 2010. So it's been almost 15 years that they have been working on building schools, bringing education to people in this village, bringing resources for them to excel academically. They were also providing opportunities for employment and helping this youth to learn skills that could be useful in life. So overall, I was talking to him about those actions. And he told me that in general, San Mateo Foundation has impacted 447,000 lives throughout this almost 15 years, which I think is amazing, just for that section of Guatemala. So that whole story got me thinking about how active and dynamic my dad's life has been. And I wanted to connect that with the purpose of life and with something that Aristotle defined as eudaimonia. And I guess the best translation or the best interpretation of this word is to flourish. Our purpose of life is to flourish, simply. And when we live a dynamic life, we allow ourselves to self-exploration, to self-enhancement, and we contribute to our own value. And I think that's the most important thing in life. So going back to the example of the paper, like if we want to stretch that example a little bit about purpose and becoming, I explained that the ashes from papers can become concrete, and that concrete can become the foundation to build buildings and fortify them. What about fertilizer? So fertilizer gives life, and it causes that effect of flourishing. And so I guess the bottom line for this idea of becoming is that the purpose of becoming transforms you into your best self as you live a dynamic life. I want to leave that thought with you, and I thank you for your time.